I just think that, like, for people walking around calling Ryan Poles King Poles, I think that the idea of they have this great culture that has been week after week, we have seen it be cracked away easily. Like, the idea that there is someone who might have the foresight to protect the quarterback from the organization is wild. And part of the reason that I think that, Dan and Marshall, is because they've wanted the quarterback to fix the problems with the organization.
Yeah, they thought he was the savior.
That's
Lawrence.
not how that works.
They thought they were going to drop him in and everything was going to be fixed.
Why did they think that? I don't understand what you saw that would lead you to believe one man can fix everything.
It's the same thing that a lot of people were saying about Caleb, like the idea of, well, generational quarterbacks, and then we have to do everything we can to help this quarterback, and yet some of the simplest stuff that they could be doing, they are unwilling to do. How much more evidence do you need that it ain't Shane Waldron?
Well,
how much more?
Well,
listen,
and here's the
I need no more. By the way,
No.
What I'll say to that is we've now seen matchups with him and other rookie quarterbacks, and not once has he looked like the best rookie quarterback on the field. And to me, that's an indictment on the coaching staff. Full stop.
You guys remember when they clearly made the decision last year to drop Justin Fields into the deep end of the pool in the first 3 weeks of the season and say, all offseason we've been planning for the next level and a pro-style offense, and they forced it on him, and he didn't handle it well. It was clear that he didn't handle it well.
Maybe because he was being taught by a clown.
Well, maybe, but like as always, we had all the football conversations where you try to decode it. And I'm not offering an answer to that, but I am pointing as high as you are pointing with it, Lawrence, and because what I said last year was that Poles was fully on board with what Getsy was doing in terms of Getsy and Eberflus saying, let's give Justin the full pro-style offense and see if he can handle it. And if he can, great. And if not, then we'll do the soft tank and work our way towards this. Here we are now with Waldron. They have forced Caleb into a full-on pro-style thing where they're giving him full power to change everything at the line of scrimmage. And like Olin said, he's changing plays too much. Caleb is overwhelmed. So I think there is a Poles theory on what quarterbacks should be allowed to do.
Well, he's wrong.
That he is wrong about, and a lot of the rest of the league is wrong too, as we know. It's a very difficult thing. And I don't think Poles is great at thinking about how to set up a quarterback for success.
Yeah, some of that autonomy has to be earned.
Right.
And they seem to not want to do that. And I get that. Like, you have number one pick in the draft. A lot of people are praising that pick. You kind of turn the keys over to him. But the problem is like, you didn't give him anyone that he was going to be able to actually work with. And I will go back to this, and I'm sure that there will be people that will shout me down on it. But if you listen back to what Cliff Kingsbury's reaction was when people asked him about his interviews here, it makes you go, wait, did they not hire this guy because he's not part of their clique?
100%.
Did they not hire this guy because the head coach was terrified that someone who would have Caleb's ear and someone who has a head coaching background would snake his job from him?
Lawrence, that part of it is that is so. Those two reasons are it, man. Those two reasons are it, because the clique has been damaging things and continues to, because Trace Armstrong was a Getsy guy and a Waldron guy, in addition to everything else. But also, your leader is not a leader, and that is just so incredibly obvious. Every time Eberflus talks, it's more and more embarrassing, and has really devolved into complete uselessness.
What did they promise Trace Armstrong? That's really what I want to know. What did they promise the shadow president of this team for the three clients we know he has in Poles, Eberflus, Waldron?
Yeah, I'm adding Getsy.
Don't forget about Getsy, yeah.
I think what happens is that Poles gets the job. And is like, oh, yeah, man, I got you. And so that's a big part of it, is that he's a kingmaker for Poles. And then also, within the building, we know how weak this ownership is, man. They don't want badasses. They haven't had a real badass since freaking Ditka. It's embarrassing to say.
Well, that's what we talked about, too, when we read what Mike Sando had in The Athletic today. where Mike Sando is, and this is what's happening now, is the national people are starting to come around, and they're starting to talk to sources, and they're starting to talk to league level people, and they're starting to ask questions. And he quotes an anonymous team executive who says the Bears don't want and will not command a strong-willed, big-name head coach because with Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles already around, there's just not enough oxygen in the room.
I mean, and I think that I hadn't read that, but man, I think that's spot on, and that is for sure. I can tell you what a lot of people around the league have known and are saying is that they don't want a strong leader because it freaks them out. Grow a pair.
No, that's ridiculous, and you need that to win. That's why they can't turn the corner. That's direct evidence. Who rejects good leadership? Strong leadership, someone who's been there, done that, knows how to get the job done. I don't understand that way of thinking.
I think that they have believed that they have the strong leader on the football side.
With Poles.
And I think that they thought that they had the strong leader on the business side with Kevin Warren. That may still prove to be true, but when I start looking at Poles, you got to look at the totality of this and some of the decision-making that has happened with him, and the idea that you signed off on not one but two offensive coordinators who don't seemingly know what they're doing.
Yes.
One who's already out of the league and another one who's going to be following him soon. Then your whole thing is, I was an offensive lineman.
Right.
And so is my assistant general manager. We know offensive line play. And in fact, this is the deepest that we've ever been at the offensive line in that room.
They got good dudes who they think they could coach up. They got good dudes who they think they could coach up instead of good players.
Do they have good dudes who they can coach up?
I need
one of them, because one of them they paid a whole lot of money to, and all of a sudden he's got back spasms. So you tell me, outside of the trades that Ryan Poles has made, what's really impressed you about the way that he runs the football operation of the Bears? It's everything. It's not just drafting Caleb Williams. It's everything that has to go with it, including continued belief that Matt Eberflus is anything more than what he continues to show you. And his record, if his record is not good enough to prove to you that he doesn't know what he's doing, what are you looking at and what are you looking for?
I think Eberflus is a puppet for King Poles here, and he's allowed him to stay there and do it. Here's my question in regards to the Mike Sando thing in this conversation. Can a badass leader in your football organization be the executive? Has to be the head coach.
It has to be.
It has to be.
He's the guy who's got to get the job done with those 53 men on the field.
Yes, and he's the one who's out there in front as your leader, as your mouthpiece to the public, as your mouthpiece to the players. It can't be Poles. Case in point, it's not Brad Holmes in Detroit. It is Dan Campbell in Detroit.
Yes, that's a great example.
And watch that team last night busting their ass, clawing their way back, getting trucked 23-6 of the half.
5 interceptions. It doesn't matter.
But they never stopped grinding.
It's not binary. Brad Holmes can also be a badass.
Sure.
And he can be brave enough to bring in a badass.
Yeah, well, there it is.
Well, that's my issue.
And Poles is not brave enough to bring in a badass because, again, Eberflus' choice was all Poles. Don't believe people who tell you it was Polian or tell you it was ownership at the last minute. It was Poles. They were going to get Dan Quinn, and they should have gotten Dan Quinn.